All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day three of Convergence. I'm sure you guys had an opportunity to attend lots of exciting sessions in past couple of days. So we're going to kick off this session with exciting content as well, Security in Dynamics AX 2012. We will in particular look at how with AX 2012 we are trying to simplify security implementation. My name is Bigyan Rajbhandari. I'm a program manager with Microsoft Corporation. You know, security has always been one of my favorite topics to talk about. In the past few years, I've worked for Microsoft. I've always been involved in designing and developing security for multiple teams, including Dynamics AX. I've also been a developer and a consultant, so I know exactly how painful it is to develop and manage security. So those are some of the problems we are trying to address with AX 2012, right? I also have Gregory Christians here with me. He is a senior SDET in Dynamics AX team, and one of the key people responsible for developing the new security framework that you'll see in AX 2012. Before we get started, let me remind you that this is a 300-level presentation. We are going to start with a general overview of security concepts, and then we'll do a deep dive into how you can develop security artifacts for your application. This is targeted for both administrators and developers. Actually, show of hands, how many developers or administrators we have in the crowd? Okay, great. So we have lots of contents for you here today. As I mentioned, if you could hold your questions till end of the presentation, we'd appreciate that, because since we have to go through lots of things. Also, towards the end of the presentation, we have a really exciting announcement to make here today, so stay tuned. What was that? Yeah, no Windows 8 tablet or anything like that, but it gets as good as that, though, for security developers. Anyway, as you know, security model in AX 2012 has gone through significant revisions compared to AX 2009. So we have lots of things for you to show you here today. So what we'll do is we'll start with the overview of security framework in AX 2012. We'll also look at how, as an administrator, it is a lot easier for you to manage security now. Previously, if you remember, in AX 2009, administrators were responsible for both configuring and managing security keys and user groups. And that made management a lot harder. But today, with AX 2012, we separate the development and management process into two distinct steps, which makes things much simpler, right? Also, we have a new feature called extensible data security. If you remember record-level security, which provided data security in AX 2009, it was very limited. But with the new data security feature, it's much more powerful, it's much more reliable, and it's much more flexible as well. The next one we're going to look at is flexible authentication. What we heard from you in the past is if you wanted to enable access to external users, it was a really painful process. But with flexible, flexible authentication and claims-based authentication, the process of enabling access to external users is much more simplified now. And finally, we'll also look at how you as a developer can leverage the new security framework to develop your security artifacts. As I mentioned, the security framework in AX 2012 has gone through significant revisions, right? Not only do we provide you a robust framework to develop security, but we also prepackage thousands of security items for you to utilize. So what that really does, excuse me. So what that really does for you is your implementation is much faster. You are not doing your things from ground up. Let's quickly look at what the new security model really looks like, right? If you think about it, you as an application developer, when you are developing like forms or a UI, you obviously use various controls, tables, and excuse me, and objects, right? And since those objects are core to your functionality, you have a need to secure them. That's why we call those securable objects. We had similar concept in AX 2009 as well. But the way we secure the objects was using security keys. However, that's no longer relevant, right? So what we do, what we have is the concept of permissions that secures the secureable objects. So what are permissions? Permissions are group of base objects and the type of access needed to those objects. Think of it this way. Depending on how and who you want to enable access to, you have a need to provide read-write access level to those particular objects. And permissions allow you to do that. Right? As I mentioned, we ship thousands of security items like permissions out of the box for you to utilize, and also secures most of the functionality that we ship with AX 2012 today. But just the sheer number of the items that's there makes management a lot more harder, right? So what we do is encapsulate those permissions into privileges. Privileges are a group of entry points or menu items and associated access level on those menu items. Again, think of it this way, right? When you have a form, like edit, if you want to do a task, like editing vehicle information, then on that particular form, you have various objects that you secured using permissions. Now you have a form, but you also need a menu item to point to that form. But you don't want that particular menu item to be visible to all users. So what you do is you secure those menu items using privilege. And similarly, you might have multiple menu items and multiple access levels, and these collectively become one privilege for a task. Since we group those into group of tasks, the number of items you see that we ship out of the box is a lot less than 25,000, right? But still, 5,000 is a higher number to manage. So what we do is we group those further using duties. So duties groups privileges into separate buckets of job function. What it really does is first groups privileges into one bucket of a similar task, and second, it reduces the it reduces the granularity that the privileges expose, right? This comes in really, really handy when you are trying to do something like segregation of duties. What segregation of duties allows you to do is set up compliance rules so that you have less conflict of interest when you are trying to do where you are trying to set up a job function, right? And also segregation, doing something like segregation of duty is right place to do it at the duty level. The reason for it is, first of all, it's at sufficiently high level, and second, the amount of items you have to control through duties is a lot less, right? And finally, all these collect up into roles, right? What it does is roles collects all the duties and privileges in such a way that each role is a complete set of day-to-day tasks done by a persona. For example, a branch manager. What you sort of see through this pyramid is as you go up through the pyramid, the number of items you have to develop and manage becomes less and less and less, right? So for someone like a system administrators, on a day-to-day basis, he's just managing the roles and duties, which is a lot less. The around 1,000 of items is a lot less number to manage. But whereas for a developer, he has full flexibility when he is developing the whole security hierarchy. He can develop permissions, privileges, roles or duties, and package it with the application, right? The key takeaway from this slide sort of is we have flexibility during development and simplicity during management. So we looked at the concept of security model in AX 2012, but what does, what does this really do during implementation, right? How does this help? Uh, if you look at it typically, when you implement AX at a customer site, you go into customization or deployment phase. The reason for that is we already ship thousands of security artifacts today with the product. So you may just need to tweak it and ship it out. But if you are a developer or ISV who is developing a solution, then you might have need to develop a module or different different objects. So in that case, you are the one who's developing. You start at the development phase, and you are the one who's developing security artifacts for those objects, because you are the one who knows the details about the security, the objects that are in there. Once the development is complete and you go over to the customer site and you are trying to customize, there might be some need to do some tweaks to roles and duties. Even if you take the out-of-box, take the AX product as it is and try to implement, there might still be some customization necessary. You do that at customization level, customization phase. One thing that's unique to this phase is also segregation of duties. As I mentioned, excuse me, segregation of duties is really unique to each customer, right? So it usually happens during this customization phase. And finally, before and after deployment, during and after deployment, usually there's a lot less need to do development and tweaking tasks. Your focus is more around security management and enforcement. And as you can see, Chris, the IT administrator or the system administrator, is responsible for doing this. So what you sort of see through this progression is, as you go through, the number of development tasks that you have to do is reduced step by step. And for Chris, it becomes a lot more easier to manage security on a day-to-day basis. That's functional security. For data security, similarly, you only do development and customization during development and customization phase. Chris, the system administrator, has to deal with development of policies, data security policies, a lot less than during development and customization phase. And for authentication, again, it usually happens before or after deployment. So it's a matter of setting up trust and things like that. We'll look at the data security and authentication in detail a little later. But the point here is, the security administration is a lot easier in AX 2012. Right? Not only do we provide ease of security administration, but we also provide role-tailored user experiences for users who are using the system. What I mean by that is it's not just a fancier access denied message, but a way to control elegantly what users have access to. We'll see that in the demo a little later. Before that, let me give you an example of fleet management. Fleet management, or FM Inc., is in the business of providing rental services to customer, right? It has multiple branches in Washington and California, and multiple locations within those branches, like Redmond, Seattle, whatever. We also have three personas. The first one is Marie, the branch manager. She is responsible for day-to-day operations within the California branch. We also have Terrence, the rental clerk. He's responsible for providing rental services to customer, and excuse me, is based off of Redmond. And finally, we have Chris, the system administrator, who is responsible for managing AX at FM Inc. So what we'll do is we'll look at a demo for this Fleet Management Inc. What we want to show you here today is, first, demonstrate how easy it is for Chris to manage security for users. And second, we'll also look at what role-tailored user experience really means for Marie and Terrence when they log in. Let me switch back to the demo here. So I've already fired up the the AX rich client here, this is logged in as Chris right now. This is Chris's view. As soon as he logs in, you can see that it's tailored to his experience, right? So he has access to, since he's a system administrator, he has access to all the features within AX, right? You can see on the left-hand side all the tabs he has access to and some of the common things he does on a daily basis. What we are interested is on the system administration tab, so we'll go over there. And at this point, we want to manage users. So let's go into users in the system. So fleet management already has 2 users, as I mentioned, Murray and Terrence. If you look, Murray only has system user access at this point, whereas Terrence also is system user. We'll go ahead and open up Murray first. As soon as you go into edit mode, you get all the information regarding Murray. She is of a type Active Directory user. You can see her network domain. You can see all the assigned roles down here, right? On the right-hand side, you can also see some of the privileges that's associated with this particular role. At this point, she still does not have access to any parts of AX other than some basic things. So what we're going to do is assign her a fleet management branch manager role. All right. Okay. There we go. It's kind of hard to see from here, but all right. So fleet management branch role, right? So the role assignment at this point is done, right? As soon as you close this, she has access to fleet management branch role. But one thing I'm also going to do is, as I showed you the org hierarchy for FM Inc. Previously, I mentioned that she is part of the California branch. So what I'm going to do is also assign her organization. Let's do that. So my organization is fleet management. This is already set up in the system, so I already have access to it. I'll provide her access into California branch and grant all the permissions for California branch. So let's close this. So that's for Marie. Similarly, for Terrence, what I'm going to do is assign him the fleet management rental clerk role. Okay, so close this. Now you can see Terrence is part of fleet management rental clerk role, whereas Murray is a fleet management branch manager. So now let's log in as Murray first, and we'll also log in as Terrence and see what the role-tailored user experience really looks like for them. So this is what I meant by role-tailored user experience. Well, not the error messages, but when Murray logs in, since he has only access to system user and fleet management tabs, that's the only thing she can see. There's nothing else that's cluttering her view, right? So let's go to fleet management. Since she's a branch manager, she has access to all the rentals within California branch. So these are the these are some of the rentals that's currently in the system. And if I go to vehicles, you can also see she has access to all the vehicles in California locations. For example, San Jose, LAX Airport. She can also add a new vehicle as a branch manager. She's allowed to do that. And she can also edit vehicles that's in there. But now, let's log in as Terrence. When you log in as Terrence, you see similar things. He has access to the fleet management and the system user role. So some of the things you see in here is just tailored to him. Right? Let's go to fleet management now. You'll see that he has access to all the vehicles as well. And let's go back here. He also has access to all the rental information. As a rental clerk, He's allowed to create a new rental and edit a rental that's in the system. He's also allowed to view all the vehicles for the Redmond branch. If you scroll over to the right, oh, you know what? I forgot to assign him the organization. Let me go back and do that real quick. I forgot to make him part of the Redmond branch. Let's do that. So let me log back as Terrence again. So this time, what you see is, if you go to all vehicles, you'll see that he has access to all the vehicles in Redmond branch, but he cannot see any other vehicles. He also has access to create new rentals, but if you compare it with Marie, what you'll see is he does not have permissions to edit vehicles or create new vehicles, because as a rental clerk, he's not allowed to do that. So that's what I meant by role-tailored user experience, right? Also, notice the difference between how data is shown between Marie and Terrence. As I mentioned, Terrence only has access to vehicles in Redmond, whereas Marie has access to all the vehicles in California. We'll look at that a little later, but keep that in mind. So let's switch back to our slides here. So previously, in AX 2009 and before, the main pain point for Chris really was implementing security or being compliant with security took multiple iterations, right? But with introduction of the new framework and the comprehensive role-based security that we shipped today, becoming compliant and implementing security is first a lot faster, and second, very reliable. So remember the example I just mentioned, data filtering example I mentioned between Marie and Terrence, right? Marie was able to see all the vehicles in California, but Terrence was only able to see vehicles within Redmond. So how is this possible? This is possible through a new feature called extensible data security. What extensible data security provides you is a way for developers and administrators to provide comprehensive data security based on rich policies, right? It allows you to create data security within a shared table. If you remember AX 2009, we had record level security in AX 2009. This is sort of an evolution of record level security. So to look at the concept of XDS in a little bit more detail, let's consider this scenario. Let's say we want to select, when a branch manager tries to select data from sales table, we want to restrict data in such a way that he can only see data for customers in customer group 20, right? The way we can do this is using data security policy. So data security policy is at the heart of XDS, right? It contains something called a constraint table. This is your table where you want to select data from. We also have something called primary table, which is where the data comes from for filtering. And to select a data set that we want to use as filter, we create a query on that particular table. In this case, we want to select all the customers from primary table that are in customer group 20 and filter and use that as a filter for constraint table, right? So once you have your constraint table, your the primary table, and your query, your policy is almost complete. However, you do not want to run this policy globally all the time because it may not make sense depending on your business requirement. So what you do is create a circumstance or a context, like a role or application context, that you can run this particular policy on, right? So in this case, our context is basically the branch manager role. So when this particular context becomes applicable, what happens is this data security policy automatically comes into action, and the result is your filtered data set. All right? One of the major enhancement compared to, excuse me, compared to RLS in AX 2009 is you can, with XDS, you can rest assured that this particular policy or this particular data security will always be applied no matter which client you're accessing data from. Doesn't matter if you're accessing from the rich client, it doesn't matter if you're accessing from services, and it doesn't matter if you're accessing from server methods. You can rest assured it will be applied. In case of RLS, that wasn't the case. RLS could only be applied on a rich client. Right? The reason that this is possible is we enforce data security at the very low level in the data stack. Right? Let's look at our example one more time. Right? We had a policy called sales by customer group. In that policy, we had a constraint table called sales table. That's where we want to select data from. We also had a primary table called customer table, and we wanted to run this context in the context of role branch manager. So when someone like branch manager issues a command or uses a UI to select data from the sales table, in our case, he wants to select all the data from sales table where amount is greater than 1,000. What happens during runtime is, as soon as that particular context becomes applicable, the query from issued by the user gets augmented with the query we have in the policy, and the result is your filtered query, right? This is actually, if the example I'm showing you in the screen is actually one of a real example that real query generated by the data access layer, right? This is a very simple query. It's not that complicated. But you can imagine the type of complicated scenarios you can build with, will build with the new data security, extensible data security, right? And the example I showed you previously, the FMINC example, is an example of a moderately complex policy where the organization context as well as user context are coming into play to enforce data security. So what data security allows you to do that? Previously, if you wanted to create any type of moderately complex queries or a little bit complex queries, it required multiple policies, and the large number of policies made management a lot harder. Also, to do any type of things, you would have to write X++ code. But with introduction of XDS, that's not the case. Right? You could build very rich policies and provide a comprehensive data security without having to write X++ code and just use the policies that's in the system. So we looked at so far we've looked at the functional and data security piece of things. But what about authentication, right? Authentication, as you know, or the local Active Directory authentication has always been there for AX since a long time. However, if you wanted to enable any type of, if you wanted to allow access for external users, by that I mean users who are not part of your local Active Directory, then it was a fairly complicated process. Right? You could set up domain trust and things like that. But again, as I said, it's a lot of management overhead. Right? But with flexible authentication, now you can do that fairly easily. So what flexible authentication really is, it's a claims-based authentication. Claims-based authentication that's in AX 2012. You can set up your custom forms-based authentication, or you can set up Active Directory Federation Trust to enable access for users who are using Enterprise Portal or who are coming through SharePoint in AX. As I said, right, so the way this is possible is we utilize the functionality exposed by Enterprise Portal by SharePoint to give you claims-based authentication. So consider this example again, right? So FM Inc., we had 3 personas in FM Inc. so far. But let's say FM Inc. is interested in hiring an external vendor from Contoso. But they want to do it in such a way that Lisa, or the external vendor, only has access to parts of AX, but she's not part of a local Active Directory. The way you go about doing that usually, or the way you go about providing access to Lisa would be, she would be either AD federated user or a form-based authentication user who comes to SharePoint to log in or access AX. When that happens, SharePoint or the Enterprise Portal redirects the authentication request to the secure token service provider. The token service provider, in turn, now redirects the authentication to whichever identity provider is set up. It could be form-based authentication, it could be ADFS, whatever Contoso has set up, whatever Contoso and FM Inc. has agreed to set up. So the identity provider itself authenticates Lisa and sends back the authenticated request to Enterprise Portal, and from there on, it's redirected back to AX for authorization, right? So what's really happening here is you're now separating your authentication from authorization, right? For someone like Chris, who is administrating the system, he does not really have to deal with identity management for Lisa, whereas he's only making sure Lisa has access to what she needs by providing proper authorization. So you can imagine with flexible authentication, right? Since it wasn't really there before, with this you can enable now various scenarios. For example, you can enable your customer self-service scenarios, you can enable vendor self-service scenarios, and you can do that fairly easily with flexible authentication. The last thing I sort of want to talk to you about is how, as a developer, you can leverage the new framework to develop security artifacts. With AX 2012, we have done lots of enhancement in terms of how you can how you can develop and package AX 2012 security, right? With this version, first of all, what we allow you to do is model your functional as well as data security based on your business requirements. If you think about it, it's quite compelling. The reason for that is you're now separating out your development process from an implementation process, your security requirement process from implementation process. Also, we provide you lots of features and tools that allow you to generate and maintain permissions easily in the system, and also based on metadata. And finally, security is no longer an afterthought, right? It's a first-class citizen in AX 2012. By that, what I mean is it's not only something that you implement, you think about after your deployment, but you consciously develop and deliver security artifacts with your application and as part of the same model, right? So what does the security development process really look like? Let's look at that quickly, and Gregory will give you a full demo of that. Let's go back to our example of FM Inc. You saw the rental forms, you saw the rental list, all that sort of stuff. When you as an application developer start developing forms or UI, you start with a form. And on those forms, you add various controls, right? It could be a grid control, could be your tables, vehicle tables, for example. And you want to secure those objects with permissions. So you create permissions on those objects. So your form is pretty much ready now. But you need a way to provide access to this form, or the way to launch this form. So you create menu items that points to this form. But again, this menu item will be exposed to all the users. If users don't have permissions, you don't want to show this menu item to those users, right? So what you do is create access level on that particular menu item, right? With that, and the way you secure it is using a privilege, right? So now you have a privilege, which is access to the rental form, and you have permissions to edit vehicle tables or delete information from, the FM rental table, and et cetera, right? So once you have privilege, what you want to do is now take that privilege and add it to a duty or a role. In this case, we're going to add it to FM rental clerk role. So when you add it to a rental clerk role, now this particular role has access to the privilege and has access to the form and the objects within that form, right? At this point, the security development process is pretty much complete. So now what you can do is take this, and let the administrator assign users to this particular role. So with that, I'll hand it over to Gregory. He's going to give you the full demo of how this process is done.
Sure.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me now? Yes, no? Hello? Yes. All right. Thank you, Biggie. Good morning, everyone. Let me just start by introducing myself. My name is Gregory Christians, and I have been a member of the Dynamics AX team for about 7 years now. Prior to joining Microsoft, I was actually employed with a local partner in Europe, and I actually do have experience with setting up user group permissions in AX3 and AX4. So I'm here today because I was closely involved with designing and testing the new role-based security framework in AX 2012, and I'd like to show you some of our new features we added. So when we decided to introduce this new role-based security framework, we actually did make several changes to our internal development and test processes, just to make sure you have the most benefits in our new out-of-the-box security settings. One major change we made was that we integrated security as much as possible within our developer tools. As Bigan mentioned, now you can actually add a table permission in a form. So if you think about it, this actually creates a much more maintainable security model. So if you're familiar with AX 2009, for instance, right? If you added a data source, if a developer added a data source to a form, and he deployed that form in the production environment, it could have been that a user who used that form got either an access denied error or he simply didn't see the data. This was because when you deploy a new form, you actually had to go and update all the existing user group permissions. So now in AX 2012, when a developer deploys a form into the production environment, the permissions for that form gets included, right? So all the roles that use that form automatically include that new permission for that form. So this is a much more maintainable model. So in this demo, I will actually show you how you can control access to data in a form by using auto-inferred table permissions. And I will show you how you can create menu items and secure it using a privilege. So the demo will be based on the fleet management company. So what I will do is I will create an application that will allow Lisa, who is a fleet rental clerk, to register car rental agreements. So let me just switch to my demo environment. Let me just close the existing windows. Okay, so now I'm going to open the new AX Development Workspace as Isaac, who is the developer. So this is the standard AOT that we have in AX to do development and more fix. So I actually already created some objects for this demo. So I have created this project here, demo convergence. Let me just load it up. So as Bigan mentioned, when you create an application, the first thing you do is you create your main form. So in this case, I actually already created a list page, and I named it FM Customer Rental List Page. So let me just expand this form. So if you look at the subnodes, most are still the same as in AX 2009. You have methods, you have data sources, you have form parts. This we added in AX 2012. You have designs, and then you have this new node for permissions. So let me just go ahead and expand this permissions node. So what you can see now is there are several permission groups. One is read, update, create, and delete. So usually a form can be used in different access modes. Usually you can grant a form for view access, or you can grant a form for manage access. So what we did is we created a permission group for each access mode, where you can actually define the table permissions for that access mode. So now let me just expand the read permission group. So now you can actually see the different types of subnodes. So in the read permission group, we can actually grant access to form controls, tables, server methods, and we can actually also associate the permissions from another form. So we have the read permission group, and then we also have delete permissions. So now, as a developer, as Isaac, I could actually go ahead and manually add table permissions. But before I show you that, I will actually, for the purpose of this demo, I will create the form. So the car rental agreements, I have an existing table for that in the fleet management module, and the table is named FM rental. So the first step to use the data in the form is to add that table as a data source in my form. So now I can right-click, data source, new data source, and now I can set the properties, FM rental, the table name FM rental. So one thing you may notice is that these properties, so there are properties to control the access mode on the form. So on a list page, by default, a user is not allowed to edit and create records. So this is important, as I will show you next. So now when we actually save the form, what you notice, so if we expand the read permission group, now you can actually see that a table permission for FM rental has been added in this permission group. So we did make a lot of effort in the security framework to ease up the development work. So we actually do some extra work for you. So now we have FM rental added with access level read. If I go into the delete permission group, the access level is set to delete. If I go into the create permission group, the access level is set to read. So why is that? This is because we do take those properties, allow edit, allow create into account. So as a developer, I could actually override this permission. For instance, I could change this to create. But now, as you may notice, this property system managed has been changed to no. So this actually means that you, as a developer, need to manually maintain this table permission. So for instance, if you delete the table from the form, if you remove the data source, then this table permission will remain there. So you have to go and manually remove it. So now that I added the data source, I actually want to display data on the form. So let me just go ahead and add a grid control. So I expand the designs. I can right-click, new control, add a grid. So now I'll add some fields from the data source. So let me just add, what fields do we have? Let me add the customer information. Oh, I cannot see it. Bear with me, the screen is pretty far off. I'll add the vehicle field, I'll add start mileage, and I'll add the rental ID. So now we added a grid on the form. So now the next step is I want to expose this form on the main menu so that the user can access it from the workspace. So what I can simply do is I can create a menu item for this form by simply drag and dropping this form to the display menu items node. Something is wrong. Okay. So now it created this display menu item. So let me set some properties. Let me give the menu item a new label. Let me give it demo customer rentals. So let me save this menu item. So I'll add this menu item to my project. So now we created the menu item, and now I want to expose this menu item on the main menu. So we have the fleet management menu here, which is already added in the main menu. So I can simply drag and drop this menu item to the fleet management menu. Let me just move this to the top. Okay, so now we created the list page. I can actually open it up. And as you can see so far, we can't do that much. All we can do is we can see the car rental agreements. So now I want to actually add a function to allow Lisa to register new car rental agreements. So I want to add a menu item in the ribbon here. So for the purpose of this demo, I already created a new form that will allow Lisa to register a car rental agreement. So now I can add this form into my list page. So I have my ribbon here, which is an action pane, and I have a button group. So now I can simply add my menu item to register car rental agreements into my ribbon, just by drag and dropping the menu item. So let me just go ahead and set some properties. So let me just give it a label, an image. Left. Let me give it the image for create document. I have memorized this icon ID here. And then this needs to be an embedded resource. So I set an icon on the menu item and the ribbon. And then I need to set these properties. So I want to make sure when you open the form, it opens in new mode. So when the form opens, it will automatically set it to create a new record. So let me change this property to new. And we do not need to pass in the record into the new form. Okay, so now I created the form, and now I can actually register a new rental. So now you've seen me create the forms and the menu items. So now I will actually secure those menu items using a privilege. So I'll actually grant access to my menu items. So what I can do is I will create a privilege in my project. So I can actually right-click, new, security, privilege. So now it will pre-create my object. I will give it a new name, FM customer rental privilege. And let me give it a label as well, demo customer rental privilege. So now that I created my privilege, let's go ahead and expand this new object. So you can actually see two new subnodes. One is entry points and one is permissions. So the entry points, so we define an entry point as either a menu item, a web menu item, or a service operation. So in this subnode, you can actually grant access to a menu item. Then we also have the permissions node. So the permissions node can be used to override permissions at the menu item level. So let me just... No, I'm talking about the WCF service. Yes. So let me go ahead and grant access to those menu items. So first, I want to grant full access to my list page menu item. So I can simply drag and drop it to my entry points node. And as you can see, it added the menu item as a reference. And now we can set the access level to this menu item. So let me increase it to delete access. So the next step is we also need to grant access to the menu item that allows us to register the car rental agreement. So let me grant access to that menu item as well, FM register rental. And I will increase the access level to create. So the next step, so now we actually created our first privilege. So the next step is to grant access to this privilege within a role. So I have created an existing role for this demo, which is named FM Fleet Rental Clerk. And I already have a user added in my system. Her name is Lisa. So what I can do is I can add this new privilege into my role by simply, again, using the drag and drop function. So now I add the privilege into my security role. So now when I save this role, the permissions for this privilege will be added in the role. So now I can actually test it out. So let me open a workspace for Lisa. So now you can see that Lisa can access my new menu item, Demo Customer Rentals. And when we open it, she can see all the car rental agreements, and she can actually register a new car rental agreement. So, as you may have noticed, as a developer, I actually had to be aware of which menu items I used on the form when creating the privilege, right? So I actually had someone coming to me yesterday and asking me a question. So I'm a VAR, and I'm a partner, and I work in the VAR layer. And I customized some forms, and I added menu items to the forms. So how can I actually figure out to which privileges I need to update to grant access to those menu items, right? So we do kind of acknowledge that the current experience in AOT is a bit cumbersome. So we decided to address this issue. So let me just move to my next slide. So I'm very pleased to announce you that we have recently delivered this new tool named the Security Development Tool for Dynamics AX 2012. So you can actually download it today from informationsource.dynamics.com. So I'm very excited about this tool. It's currently still in a beta version because we would like to get your feedback on this tool. So please do go to the site and try out the tool and give us feedback. So let's actually see what features this new tool has. So first of all, the tool is designed to simplify the creation and maintenance of roles, duties, and privileges. So if you have worked with AX 2009, you may remember that when creating a new user group, you could actually use the main menu to grant permissions to certain modules, right? For instance, you could go to the inventory management module and grant full control to all those menu items. So we kind of delivered the same experience with this new tool. So you can actually load in a role within the tool, and then you can use the main menu to start granting access to menu items. So the tool will also guide you in setting menu item access levels. For instance, if you want to decrease the access to a menu item, for instance, from full control to view, it may be required that you have to update several duties because a menu item can be granted several times within a role. So the tool will actually guide you in updating the relevant duties and roles. One neat feature in this tool is it allows you to actually record your business process flows. And it will tell you exactly which entry points, menu items you have used. Another cool feature in this tool is it comes with a security test workspace. So as a developer, you can actually open a security test workspace for a given role, and you can actually test out the permissions for the role. You can actually also debug X++ code within the security test workspace. So let me just go ahead and demo this new tool. So I will show you 3 scenarios with this tool. The first one is I will show you how you can actually use the tool to identify menu items, and I will use my existing rental agreements application that I just created in the previous demo. I will also show you how you can update menu item permissions for the fleet rental clerk role. And the third scenario is I will show you how you can open a security test workspace and also debug X++ code in security mode. So let me just go ahead and switch back to my demo environment. Where is my mouse? Okay, there. So let me show you first how you can actually open this tool. So as a developer, what you can do is you can right-click this role. You can also, so you can right-click this role and you can select Add-ins, Security Tools, Security Development Tool. So I have pre-configured the tool in this environment. So you can actually find the install instructions on MSDN TechNet. So this option is also available for privileges and duties. So you can actually load in a duty or privilege in this tool. So let me just go ahead and open this tool. So it takes a while to load the data at first. All right. So there's a lot of options on this form. I will guide you through it step by step. So the first thing you may notice is you have the option to load in different roles. So you can actually switch to another role. So the main navigation is on the left-hand side, you can see the main menu view. So you have the rich client view. You have enterprise portal, and you have all the service operations. So on the right-hand side, you actually see the list of all your entry points, meaning menu items and service operations, in your environment. So by default, you can see the entry point name, the access level, current access level for the current selected object, and also the access level in the system user role. So this is the only data we show by default. You can actually load in more data. So there's a button here in the ribbon, load additional metadata. I won't show it to you right now because it does take some time to load. But if you click this, then you will actually see additional information in the list, such as the labels, the layer, and which model the menu item is located in. So now I've shown you the main navigation in the form. So let me show you the first scenario. So how can I use this tool as a developer to identify menu items? So the first approach I can take is I can drill down in the main menu. So if I take my previous demo as an example, I can go into fleet management, drill down. I can see that the role grants access to this fleet management module. So now I can actually see my new menu item, and when I select it, the menu item gets selected automatically in the list, so you can see more information about it. So now, as developer, I want to figure out which menu items are actually added on the form, because we also need to grant access to those. So what I can actually do is I can select my menu item and right-click it. So there are several options in this context menu. I will walk you through it step by step. But for this scenario, I will select the Discover sub-menu items. So what this will do is it will browse through the form and collect all the menu items that are added on that form. So let me just go ahead and click it. So now you can see it discovered our register rental menu item that we added on the form. So let me just quickly check my notes here. Okay. So another approach in identifying menu items is to use this new security recorder. So what I can actually do is I can start recording, I can run through my scenario, and then when I stop recording, it will show you all the menu items that I've clicked on. So let me just click the start recording. So now whatever menu item I click in my current workspace, it will be recorded. So let me just go ahead and walk through my demo. So I can right-click Demo Customer Rentals menu item and click Open in Current Workspace. And now I can actually click on the Register Rental menu item. So it will open this new form. So now I walk through my scenario. We have completed everything. And now I can actually click Stop Recording. So now it will show you all the entry points that we clicked on. So now they get filtered in the list. And now from here, you can actually use them to grant access. So this goes into my next scenario, which is how you can use this tool to update permissions on the role. Correction. So this is a new table permission that we added for date effective tables. So correction allows an administrator to grant access to all the records in the past, current, and future. I should have set it to create access. I think I just made a mistake here. It should have been create. I just had a little trouble looking at the screen. Okay, so now I will show you how you can actually update permissions to on the role. So the first thing I can do is I can use the tool to grant access to an existing duty or privilege. So let's say for this fleet rental clerk role, I want to allow the role to manage expenses. So what I can do is I can go to the travel and expense module. I can drill down, and I can right-click this All Expense Reports menu item, select it, and now I have these two options here. One is to reference an existing duty, and another is to reference an existing privilege. So let me go ahead and select Reference Duty. So now it opens this dialog, and it will show me all the duties that grant access to this menu item. Just give it a second. All right. So you can see there are two duties in my system that grant access to the expense menu item. So let me go ahead and select the duty that allows us to maintain expense reports. So I will select this duty, and now I can actually add this duty as a reference to my role. So all the permissions for that duty will get included in my fleet rental clerk role. So now let me just go ahead and click Add to Role. So now the tool will reload the permissions for the role. And as you can see in the main menu on the left, all the menu items that have a new permission are highlighted in bold. So we can see that when you grant this role to a user, now he will be able to see the general ledger module, because there's a menu item that is granted in this module. And he can see the travel and expense module as well. So this is the first approach in how you can update permissions on a role. Let me show you a second approach. I actually want to decrease the access level on my role to the menu items that I created in the previous demo. So let me switch back to the fleet management module. So now what I want to do is I want to select my two menu items and change the access level from delete to view access. So I can right-click my demo customer rentals menu item, and now I can select this option, set entry point permissions for the current node and all the expanded subtree items. So this will open up a dialog, and it will show me the menu items for the current one and all the subnodes. Okay, so now we have this dialog. And you can see my 2 entry points that I created in my demo. So you can see I have 2 columns here. I have one to set a new desired access level, and I have one that shows me the current access level. So what I want to do is I want to decrease the access level to my list page to view. And I actually want to hide this register rental menu item, so the role only allows me to see the rental agreements. It doesn't actually allow me to register one. So I can actually change this to no access. So now that I have set my new desired access levels, I can actually go ahead and click next. So now the tool loads in all the duties and privileges within the role. And as you can see, when I select an entry point, the tool actually highlights the privilege that grants access to this menu item. So it could be that the menu item is granted like multiple times through different duties and privileges, right? So all those menu items would be highlighted in bold. So you as a developer can go into each privilege and see the current access level. And you can use this tool to actually apply this new desired access level to this privilege. So you can do this by right-clicking the privilege and selecting Apply Entry Point Access Level to the selection. So if I will click this, then the access level to the menu item will decrease from delete, full control, to only view access. So now you can see the permission changed to view, and the current access level also changed to view. So if there are multiple privileges, for instance, if I had another privilege that granted edit access, then I would have to go and update that privilege as well. So we do expect this to be an iterative process. So you can use this tool to guide you in updating the access levels. So let me just go ahead and remove the access level to the FM register rental menu item. So now I can also select the menu item, and I can apply this new desired permission to my privilege. So what will happen is the menu item, existing menu item reference will actually be removed, because by default, if you don't add a menu item to a privilege, it doesn't grant access, right? So instead of setting the access level to no access level, we just decided to remove the reference. So now I actually have finished the process in updating all the desired access levels. So now when I close my form, you can see that the permissions have been updated to my menu items. And so now that I have lowered the access level on my menu item on the list page, I can actually show you another neat feature in this tool. So what I can do is I can open my menu item in the current workspace. And what you notice here is the icon in the ribbon has actually changed to no access. So this is a very useful feature as an administrator in identifying the menu items on the forms that are actually hidden within the role. So you can actually enable and disable this feature. There is a control for this in the ribbon. So you can actually disable this. We name this feature Mark Form Controls. All right, so now I have shown you how you can identify menu items using the tool and how you can actually update access to menu items as well. So now I will show you the third scenario, how you can actually test a role by using a security task workspace. So what I can simply do, I have this large button here in the ribbon to open a security task workspace. So let me just go ahead and click it. So now it opens me a new workspace with the permissions only for my current role. So now I can actually go ahead and test out the role-tailored experience. So now if we go into fleet management, if I open the demo customer rentals, you can see that the menu item in the ribbon is disappeared because the role no longer grants access. So one very useful feature is that you can actually also debug X++ code in a security workspace. So let me just go ahead and add some code into my list page. So my form is here. Let me just add some code on startup using the init method. Init. So it will open the X++ editor, so I can actually add some code into my form. So let me just add any statement and debug equals 1. So now I can actually set a breakpoint into my method. Let me close this dialog. So one very useful feature with this tool is you can actually open a menu item directly in a security task workspace. This makes it a bit more easy for you, then you don't have to open a security workspace and navigate through all the modules. So now you can just simply right-click and select Open in Security Task Workspace. So if I click this, it will open a workspace and it will execute the menu item that I have selected. So now it opens the Security Task Workspace and it actually executed my form, but it didn't hit my breakpoint, probably because I forgot to save the form. Let me just go ahead and save it. Okay. So now when we open in Security Test Workspace, the X++ debugger will attach. So this is very useful for developers, so you can actually debug X++ code. For instance, if you have some XDS policies and you want to debug some queries, it is very useful. I've used it myself, so okay. All right, so, okay. So let me just recap the highlights of this tool. So I've listed out all the pain points that we had in AX 2012 as of today. So one of the pain points was that it was pretty difficult to identify hidden many items on a functional role. So some of the features that this tool comes with to mitigate this problem is the main menu view, the mark for controls, and the ribbon. This covers up many items in the recorder. Another pain point was if you had to tweak the many item permissions on the role because of if there are multiple duties and such. So the features that this tool delivers to mitigate this pain point is reference duty and the set entry point permissions guided form. Another pain point was that as a developer, to test a role, you actually had to use a different Windows account to test a role. So you could usually developers would use the run as function. It was also pretty difficult to debug X++ code without system administrator privilege. So the security test workspace also mitigates this problem. So in the end, this tool will enable you to reduce the effort in maintaining security artifacts, and it will make it easier for you to test and debug scenarios in security context. So before I hand it over to Begin, I want to ask you to please give us feedback on this tool. There is actually a link on the download that will direct you to the MS Connect site. Also, tomorrow I will be at the Dynamics AX kiosk in the Expo tomorrow morning from 10:30 to 12:30 if you want to ask me any questions in person. So that was it for me. I will now direct back to Begin.
Let me recap what we saw so far, and then we'll start taking questions. Thanks, Gregory. This tool has lots of features that we are providing to developers, and we expect to help the development process quite a bit. So definitely go download it, test it out, and provide us feedback. So to quickly recap, what you saw today is with the new security framework, the new security model that we have in AX 2012, not only does it help you develop security by a robust framework, it also provides you a fast implementation because we ship thousands of baseline role definitions today with the product, right? We also provide role-tailored user experience to users who log in. And as you saw, there's a new framework called Extensible Data Security, which provides comprehensive data security for you. Also, extending ERP functionality as your businesses move to the cloud is a lot more easier now through flexible authentication. And also, last but most importantly, it simplifies, the new framework simplifies the development process quite a bit. You can develop and package security artifacts as a part of your application modules today. So with that, actually the main point, the main idea here is making security and simplicity coexist within the AX product. So that's the goal. Anyway, with that, we'll take questions. There's a mic up there. If you could walk up to the mic, we are recording as well, so that will help the recording. Otherwise, I can repeat the questions. There are resources as well. I'll put the slide up. There's download information and other resources for you to go check it out. So definitely go do that. Also, please fill out the surveys when you get a chance. We'll definitely like to get some feedbacks to improve our presentation. So with that, we'll open up for questions.
Right. First of all, that tool was great, the security tool. Thank you very much. So now I have a couple of questions. The first question is that I do my development environment, I change roles and I change all that through the tool. Now how would I migrate to my production?
Sorry, what was the question?
Sorry, could you? So you're saying that you develop security artifacts in your development workspace, and you want, yes, in AOT, correct?
Yeah.
Or in the tool?
Through the tool. I mean, I bring up the tool, I go in the forms, and I modify.
You mean the new tool?
In the tool, yes.
New tool, actually, the new tool is part of the AOT, right? So the MorphX environment. So anything you develop in that is already part of the AOT. So you could do the same thing where you create your project, you can add roles, security roles and things like that separately, and you can export it out as a model where you can import that later in a production environment.
So it works with the user layer or whatever the layer that I modify through the tool, then export, import, the same way it works.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
So whatever layer you are in, it actually is working in that layer within the MorphX environment. Perfect,
perfect. That's one. And the second question is, do you still support field level securities? In a form, there is a particular field, that I want to give an edit permission or an update permission to that field. Do we still do that in AX 2012?
Compared to AX 2009?
Yes.
Yes. The granularity of permissions is still there. The security keys is no longer valid. Instead, we replace security keys with permissions. Right, so whatever you could do with security keys, you can still do with permissions. Actually, it provides a lot more flexibility than before.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, I didn't show that, but when you added the table to the form, the table permission, you can also add table fields below the table.
Okay, gotcha.
So
Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a similar question to his on the granularity. So what we have trouble with is identifying in the security tools. I haven't looked at this new tool yet, but like finding a field or an object on a form is what we struggle with. And I'm wondering if there's a way that it could make that easier. Like everything I saw is at the menu level, menu item level, but is there a way that you could, for instance, there's a particular control in the sales table form that we want to exclude certain groups from having permission to, or grant only certain one group permission to. So how can we identify what that control equates to?
Well, there's different approaches, right? First of all, you can just drill down in the controls yourself using the AOT view. Second approach is you can actually use cross-references. So if you compile AX with cross-references enabled, you can actually right-click the form and then select Add cross-references and then see the using. And then in the form, you can actually see all the controls that are added within the form, right? So you can actually filter in that form. So that's one way how you can identify controls on a form, right? You can also actually, if you open the form, you can actually right-click and I did forget what the option was, but you can actually view the control name and the new window as well. I can show that to you as well if you
Yeah,
want.
so, right, you can do personalize, we'll tell you the name
Yeah.
of the field. And
Yeah,
we
it's
don't
the
have any
personalized,
trouble,
yeah.
Right, and we don't have any trouble figuring out the name of the field or what table it's in or anything like that. But we have trouble figuring out when you get into security, where to find that particular, like we know the name of the control, we know the name of the field, that's not the problem. The problem is when we're trying to assign permissions to be able to identify, which object that is. It's very, very tedious.
Oh, so you mean you open the form in like a workspace and you don't see certain control and you try to figure out how to identify it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So we have a lot of, we're in a upgrading from 2009 to 2012, so we're redoing all our security roles
I see.
for that, and we have several roles. Everybody's in the sales table form all the time, but not everybody has permission to do the same things. So here's one example of something little that our security people, I have 2 people working on, setting up security pretty much full time. And this is one little thing they're struggling with, but these things take them forever. So when you open the sales table form, we have 3 different sales roles, like a manager, a clerk, whatever. And they can't, when you go to post a confirmation, where you go to the click the button for the printer settings, that button's just gone.
Okay.
And it's a security thing. As sysadmin, I can see it, but we can't. So, I have somebody who's been all last week trying to find this button.
Okay.
And it's silly, but salespeople have to post. They have to specify the email address. And so there should be an easier way.
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
able
that's good feedback actually. We could actually add something within the tool to help you identify the form controls next to the menu items, right? So that's definitely something we can look at.
Okay, so you think that's possible?
Yeah, it should be possible, of course. Anything is possible, right? It's just writing code. Right?
Okay.
What's that, the report? The recorder only records menu items. It doesn't record form controls.
At this time, the tool only does it for the menu items. But it's something like that. We'll definitely like some feedbacks, and we'll like to hear from you. If we can add it, we'll definitely add it to the tool.
Okay, yeah, thank you, because that's really what we struggle with. And
Sure.
that's one
And
silly example, and it takes people weeks to figure these things out.
In the meantime, we can definitely sync up offline. We can look at various scenarios and see if we can help you out there. Yes, definitely.
I would like to have my security person, administrator, get in touch with you.
Sure.
And he's a developer, so
Here.
knows what he's doing.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Hi there. In 4.
Before before I get to it, you mentioned something about upgrading from AX 2009 to 2012 as well. So what I wanted to add is, in the information source itself, we have another tool called Security Upgrade Advisor Tool, which will help you upgrade from AX 2009 to 2012. It's not a one-click solution, but it will help you get to a baseline a little faster. So you may want to check that out as well.
Write that
So,
down, because that would help, because we have our roles defined in 2012, and now, in 2009, we're trying to bring them over.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that.
Hi there. In 4.0, there was some security reports released by Microsoft. Are you planning on doing anything like that for 2012, the user-based and group-based security roles, or is that up for us to develop ourselves? And how hard would it be? Is it easier this time around?
So excuse me, what kind of reports did you say?
They're Microsoft security reports, so they're based on either users or groups, and we run these, and we have our accountants sign off on them for SOCs.
I see. At this point, we don't have any reports that actually will tell you which user belongs to which role. You can sort of do that through the UI, but I think there are some plans to develop reports, but that's still in the works. So,
are the tables easier to identify so that we can build our own reports? We had great trouble doing that in 4.0.
yes, we can definitely provide you more information on how you can get all that information together in a report.
Is there a data model or something, like where we can see how the tables flow, or?
Yes, yes, there is, but I don't think it's published yet. But we'll definitely, if you could keep in touch, we'll provide you more information. Yeah.
My name is Bo Teilman from AX Specialist in Copenhagen. I want to follow up on the lady in black here, questions about how to identify the security object from within the main menu. I think what you should do is that I've seen in the expo that you can, on the menu item in the AOT tree, you can right-click and then you have a possibility to see the security roles and the security object. I think you should extend that into the client, that a user within the client can, on a menu item there, or with a field within a form to identify which security roles does this field is supported by and which security object. And I think maybe the way to do it, I could see that your system administrator doesn't have any permissions. It's embedded some way in the client. I think you should take the security administrator and do the same thing, and then only let this role and the system administrator and the security role that have this permission to right-click anywhere in the form and see who has this permissions.
So you mean in the rich client itself?
Yeah, yes, in the rich
system
client.
The reason we discourage that is we believe security development process should be different than the management process, right? So when you provide information, or when you develop security roles or security artifacts, developers are the one who will have detailed knowledge about how a form is secured, how objects are secured. So it mostly happens in the development area. So with the new tool, actually, you can do that very easily, identify menu items as well as all the objects that has permissions.
Yes, but you're still, when you're identifying, you are in the AOT tree. I like that still to be in the clients.
Sorry, I didn't catch that last part.
The identifying of the security objects and the security role is still in the AOT tree, in your new tool there. So I just wanted.
So I actually didn't show this, but you can also open the tool from within the regular workspace. If you install the tool, there's also an option in the system administration module, so that you can use to open the tool from within the regular client.
Thank you.
Hello. The gentleman who spoke earlier said that ask you a question about fields level security. It's not available in 2009. So the question is, you said the all features from 2009 goes to 2012. It's not available to 2009. The question is it available in 2012? I will give you an example. If we have record level security, but we want to give for these records, this user access to these fields, but not for these records, based on, let's say it's a cost information. So for these items, cost will be available to everybody, but for some items, not to everybody. So that's fields level based on record level. Any news about that?
So is that, I didn't catch the question properly.
The statement is fields level security is not available in 2009.
Yes.
The question is it available in 2012?
Field level security, by field level security you mean data tables field level
Table
security?
fields for some records. Again, cost.
Okay.
We have some items, we don't care if all users see cost for these items.
I see.
But
You can
there are some
actually-
items, yeah.
You can, in 2012, you can actually set permissions at field levels. So for example, as you said, right, you could have two roles where one person sees certain fields, has full access to a certain field, whereas another user can't even see that. And you can do that with AX 2012.
For the same table.
Yes, for the same table.
Okay, so
Yes.
some users will
Using
have
permissions,
access.
yes.
So I'm guessing you run into the scenario when
Actually,
you assign
here.
multiple user groups, right?
Let me quickly show you.
No, it's record level. This, what you're talking about, was a record level security, not a field level. Field level, it's when we have different records, and only some users have access to some fields, but not to record. They
Yeah,
can
so-
see the whole record, but exclusively.
Let me show you this, right? If you see in the screen, there's no tables in here. Actually, so this is at the privilege level, right? So this particular privilege has access to FM rental vehicle table. So what I'm going to do is add new table. Where's my properties window?
I need to open it. Right click, the new table, and select properties.
Properties. So what I'm going to do is do the FM rental. Can't see it.
You can just right click the new table and do new field.
Yeah,
Doesn't work.
got hung up. Okay, so let's do this. We want FM rental. Is that rental?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't see it. Okay.
Yeah, we do run
So
over
do
time.
that. So once I do that, what I can do is now add a new field. And I can select a field in here, for example, customer, and
It's comments.
say, for example, only provide read access to this field, right? So if I save it, what happens is now whatever permissions was there in the form is overridden by this privilege. So if you assign this particular privilege to like a branch manager role, what happens is when branch manager logs in, he only will have read access despite of what you may have specified in the form, right? So that's how you can specify different, you can override permissions
On a field
for different roles, yes, on a form or
So
a
they can
object.
see the record, but not this field.
Exactly.
And they can see another record in the same table with the field.
Yeah,
No.
another record. You
In the
mean
same
s-
table.
for the same persona?
Yes. But the same
For-
table, based on another field in the
I see.
same, yeah.
So for something like that, you may want to use like the data security. You can create my constructs, which is like custom data security. Excuse me, custom data security. You could use custom data security to do something like that if it's for the same persona or the same role. If it's for a different role,
No, it's the same role.
The same role.
it's the same role.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's
Okay.
actually let's sync up offline. We
Okay,
might be
sure.
able to look into your scenario a
May I
little
have
bit
your
in detail.
Sure.
Sure.
Card.
Yeah.
Hi. In AX 2012, a user administrator can modify privileges and duties in an existing role or add their own new roles. When they do that, those changes are considered modifications in the AOT, and in order to move those changes to production, we have to move those via a project to a staging environment, test it, and then do a full model move to our production environment. What we're seeing is in the dev environment isn't where the customer is able to really test and validate security. They have to do that in the staging environment. And there doesn't seem to be a way to separate the movement of security changes to a production environment, because if we do a full model, we get it all. Is there a best practice for managing the timing differences when users are testing security changes, which requires data and lots of testing, and other changes that are code changes that are going into a staging environment that have to get moved over to a production environment? When those timing differences don't match up, what we're finding is you can't do a full model move to production because security's not ready or the other code's not ready. How can we move just the security changes on a more frequent basis to production without doing a full model and not having an ID conflict later in production?
Can I ask why you can't do a model, just a model on security? You could, if you want, you could just separate out security in a separate model and use that for migrating your security settings versus your application settings.
If I
right?
do that, will I have an ID problem when I move to production? When later I do a full model export,
when you do, so the conflict may be there when you try to export security settings with the whole model as well. Because since we do not track granularly as to what security settings change from your previous model to the new model, so it becomes a little harder to tell you where the conflicts are, right? But what you can do is you can separate the security model and your application model. If there aren't object dependencies, then you can export just the security model to your different environment. Right?
Okay, so we do actually have all the security changes being done in a cust layer, which is a cust model essentially. So are you saying that we can, independent of a regular production full model move, periodically or even daily, export the whole cust layer as a model and import it into production, and we will not have an ID conflict?
No, you will have ID conflict if you do that.
So
right?
my question is, what is the recommended best practice for managing the migration of security so you do not have
the ID conflict.
An ID conflict?
It's actually one of the problems problems or issues that have been reported. The best way we have done so far is manually resolving those conflicts when you migrate over, right? But as I said, if you're able to not incrementally export the security settings, and if you can do it all at once, that might work out better than doing incrementally at this point.
When you say all at once, meaning as a model, a full model store?
Sorry, what's that? Full model?
When you say at once, you mean doing a full model store?
Yes, exactly.
So we never have a conflict?
Yes. Yes.
And what do you have what are the plans to resolve that management issue, which is very difficult to manage, to be quite honest?
It's definitely in one of the priorities in our mind, but we will look into how we can simplify that at a later point.
Question: in AX 2009, you have record level permissions, which applies a filter on data. If I open a form, then I don't see certain records, which is fine. However, if I know that certain data exists, I can actually still enter it in, and it accepts it. So it's just a filter; it doesn't do anything active. With this extensible data security, which you have in AX 2012, is that solved?
Yeah, so with XDS, we actually added a property on a policy, so which you can use to control to which operation types to apply the data security. So by default, we only apply data security when you select records in a table, but you can actually switch it to all operations, and then it will also be enforced when you try to insert or update a record. So there is a property on policies, it's called operation types.
Last fast question. This extensible data security, does it also applies on the BI, the cubes that I'm going to create?
No, it does not.
No?
So BI has a separate security framework.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
Okay. Sure. All right, I don't need. Well, if there's any questions, we're going to take the last one. No? Okay. Thanks, everyone.